Hey guys, what's up? It's Charlie here, and today we're going to be looking at 10 lucky finds that made people rich. Do you dream of being stinking rich overnight? Most people think the only way to do that is to win the lottery, but if you have a look around, you might find something that'll make you a millionaire. That's exactly what these people did, as they got mega rich over lucky finds. Before we get into it, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too. Coming in at number 10 we have the Royal One. So for the record, this man didn't find the Queen of England. Instead, this find was actually made by an Australian miner called Bobby. It was his last day at work and he was set to retire the very next day. He was just about to clock out of work, but as he did, he checked his bucket one last time. He put his bucket in the dirt, and when he emptied the bucket, he found something called the Royal One. So what exactly is the Royal One? Well, it's actually an opal, but it looks like some kind of alien rock. It's a single opal weighing 306 carats. Bobby had been mining in this mine his entire career and he'd never found anything of value, but this 400 million year old opal was in his area the entire time. A single carat of this opal could be sold for $2,500, but seeing as this was far more than just 1 carat, his stone was actually sold for $765,000. That's right, this guy pretty much became a millionaire overnight. I'm not sure who bought this incredibly rare stone, but whoever they are, they have way too much money. Next up is shares. So we all know that you can make a ton of money off of stocks and shares. Just look at the Wolf of Wall Street for example. But most of the time it takes a lot of preparation and planning to buy the right shares to make a ton of money. Well, any stock market players will be very envious of this story. A guy named Tony purchased a box of random junk at a garage sale in California. He bought the box of junk for a mere $5. But when he began looking through all the contents, he found a note. The note turned out to be a certificate for 1,625 shares of the company Palmer Union Oil Company. Now, you likely have never heard of this company, and that's because it merged with Coca-Cola. And those 1,625 shares are now worth 1.8 million shares in Coca-Cola. And those 1.8 million shares in Coca-Cola are now worth $130 million. That made Tony one of the largest shareholders in Coca-Cola, and therefore this is the most valuable garage sale find in history. Just imagine how annoyed you would be if you accidentally sold Tony that $130 million share for $5. Next up is Declaration of Independence. So in 1776, the USA declared their independence. They drafted up 25 copies of what is known as the Declaration of Independence. This was a document that was signed giving America their independence. Well, in 1989, a Pennsylvania man went to a flea market. He bought a picture frame for just $4, but when he took the picture out of the picture frame, he saw something behind the picture. It turned out to be the Declaration of Independence, but he assumed it was a fake. However, he took it to get checked out and he realized he just bought a mint-condition Declaration of Independence. That's right, it was an actual, real copy from 1776. He was able to sell this for $2.4 million in 1991. But to who you may be asking? Well, he actually ended up selling it to Jordan Belfort, aka the real-life Wolf of Wall Street. Next up is egg. So you can get an egg for a few cents at your supermarket. Well, one day a guy accidentally bought an egg for $33 million, but this wasn't any old regular egg, it was a Fabergé egg. Fabergé eggs are pretty much a rich man's action figure. They're totally pointless ornaments that are worth a ton of money. There was a working class guy in the USA who'd been making his living off purchasing scrap metal. One day he saw a gold orb and had various gems in it. He bought it for $14,000 and believed he could scrap it and make a $500 profit. But when he took it to an appraiser, it turned out to be the third imperial egg. The third imperial egg is one of just 50 Fabergé eggs. They date back from years ago in Russia, and just one of these eggs is worth $33 million, which is exactly what this guy sold it for. Just imagine buying something for $14,000 and flipping it for $33 million. Next up is whiskey. So I'm sure we all like a glass of whiskey every now and then. And whiskey isn't exactly the cheapest drink you can buy. But one day a guy called Brian bought a new house and went into the attic. When he did, he found various boxes left behind by the previous owner. The previous owner had passed on, and they left most of their belongings in the house. Well, in one of these boxes were 13 bottles of whiskey dating back from 1917. He didn't know anything about whiskey, so he took them to experts, who valued them at $2.6 million. Now, you may assume that he would have sold it right away, but instead, Brian said he would not be selling the whiskey. Instead, he actually plans to drink this $2.6 million whiskey with his friends. If I was his friend, I would not be drinking them, I'd be stealing them. Next up is comic book. So when you were a kid, you likely bought comic books for a few cents. But of course, there are some, well, nerds who buy very expensive comic books. These can be rare comic books or first editions. Well, one day a Minnesota man bought an abandoned home and hoped to renovate it to make some money. He bought the home for $10,000, which is a bargain. But while tearing down one of the walls, he found a comic book inside. At first, he simply assumed it was a random comic book, but he realized it was Action Comics #1. You don't exactly have to be a comic book connoisseur to know that Action Comics #1 is the most valuable comic book of all time. It was published back in 1938 and is the first comic book to feature Superman. He sold it for $100,000. That's right, he bought the $10,000 house to make some money, but instead he made his investment back 10 times just by breaking down a wall. That is one super lucky find. Next up is gold coins. One day an American man who was living on welfare and was almost homeless was metal detecting. He'd been metal detecting in the same area for 18 years and hadn't found anything big. However, one day he found some gold coins. He thought they would be worth quite a lot of money, but then he realized these were Anglo-Saxon gold coins. And it turned out he'd actually found the St. Albans hoard. These coins were estimated $1.6 million value, but sadly, seeing as he found it on US property, it legally belonged to the government. The government gave half to various museums, but did give the man half in return, seeing as he did find them. So this guy went from homeless to almost being a millionaire just like that. Next up is pearl. So if you find a pearl on the beach, it can be pretty cool looking and you can make a little bit of money. But one day a poor Filipino fisherman caught something on the rocks near his island of Palawan. He was trying to free his anchor, which had been caught on a rock, but it turned out that rock was a 34-kilogram pearl. The fisherman collected it, put it on his boat and sailed back home. And believe it or not, instead of selling it, he kept it under his bed for 10 years. After 10 years, he finally decided to come forward with his discovery, and he found out it was worth $35 million. That's right, this poor fisherman had been sleeping on $35 million for 10 years. I'm not sure why he did this, but I assume he regrets not getting it valued sooner. Next up is penny. So you may assume a penny is worth a penny, clues in the name, right? And if you saw a penny from 1974, it would be kind of interesting, but nothing too amazing. 1974 was only around 50 years ago after all. Well, one day a guy named Robert Lawrence inherited a coin collection from his father. Inside he found the penny from 1974. At first it was valued at $300, which was nothing too special. But then they checked again and they realized the coin was made from aluminum. Only 10 of these aluminum coins had been issued. And as a result, this penny turned out to be worth $2 million. Who'd have thought that his dad's coin collection was literally worth millions? Next up is Van Gogh. So we all know that Van Gogh is one of the most respected and famous painters of all time. Many of his works have been sold to private collections or are in museums. But a few of Van Gogh's works are actually lost. Well, one day a couple from Wisconsin bought a copy of Van Gogh's The Red Poppies. The Red Poppies is a lost work by Van Gogh. But after some time, they decided the reproduction seemed too good and they got suspicious. They later took it to an expert and he revealed it was actually the 1886 original. They bought what they thought was the reproduction for around $20. But it turns out it was the real deal and was worth $1.4 million. Now that is what I call a lucky painting. Check out the poll in the top right corner to vote for the luckiest find that made people rich. If you guys want more amazing videos, check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that on screen right now. And I even show my face in a few of those videos, so if you want to see what I look like, then check it out. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now, leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what you're waiting for, subscribe to Top 10s.